one right way to do HEMA. But it does end up being the like more full contact, I guess, version. So uh, one of the things I wanted to look at is like what can and what not necessarily can or can't be part of HEMA, but what usually isn't agreed to be as HEMA or not. My cat says hi. Um, so a lot of people ask about Viking martial arts, and while there's a lot of cross pollination between some of the Viking groups, usually it's not necessarily agreed upon as HEMA. A lot of them aren't necessarily from manuscripts. There are some. There's cross pollination. I'm not going to say like never, but generally they have their own little home. We have Damon later, who does historical African martial arts. Obviously, the difference is geography. Um, and then looking more modern, something like Savat, which is, very modern, still living and taught today. So that's a little different, but there's a lot of gray area. Like I said, there's not one right way to do HEMA. And I'm sure you find that in your own disciplines as well. So I think it's really fun to focus and look at those different things as well, and talk about them when we talk about HEMA. So I think I'll just skip forward because I don't want to talk too much. I want to do some really basic stuff and get people moving. And then we're going to try, I think we could do this, like a little fencing game or like fencing practice where, you don't have to have your camera on. I'm not going to pressure anyone for that because I know how Zoom meetings are for all of us. But hopefully you could follow along at home and maybe have something to think about and work on. So I focus specifically on longsword. We do a lot of rapier. I actually really love doing rapier. It's one of my favorites. I think like the aesthetic does mean a lot, but also there's a lot of really cool rapier stuff. But I tend to focus specifically on longsword. That's part of like what my students and the people in my community really tend to gravitate toward. So to talk a little bit about longsword, we have like two general big divisions. A lot of you may be familiar, but just to go over them for the newer people. There's obviously more. I think that's kind of the theme for this whole thing. There's a lot of different versions and different ways to do it, and a lot of things that people consider. This just seems to be the most common or recognizable way people practice. So the two big divisions of longsword are German and Italian. So German, we tend to fall around the 14th, 15th-ish century with Lichtenauer, even all the way up to Meyer. It's a pretty broad period of time, which encompasses a lot. And there are all sorts of versions through KDF. And then you look at like around the 14th century with Fiore, which is really popular. The Fiore kids are, I think, the best way to describe them as feisty. They love because their manuscript's really great and has all these great depictions of a lot of the like closer, I don't want to use German words to describe Fiore, but like grappling at the sword and grappling in general, which is fun. And I love our Fiore friends. But I started out with a German KDF school, or Kunsteffekten school, and I just kind of hung out there for, I guess it's been several years now. Hopefully today's lesson will be good for short space or small spaces. I will do my best to help make this something where you're not going to run into or hit things. So we'll start out really basic, going from the sword, how I like to teach people to grip it. I have like really tiny hands, so your mileage may vary with that. We'll do like a little tiny warm up. I have like a little yoga mat there. And then we'll go into some sword basics. I like to think of this as a building block or a stepping stone. This hopefully will be a helpful way to start your day. And I'm going to demic so we could see the space. So if you want to take a minute or two, if you have something you want to use or you have a space, feel free to follow along. And I'm very colorful today. My swords are taped up a little bit just so you could see them a little bit better. I should have thought, here I do have a green room, so the green tape, hopefully you could see it against the gray. But I have this contrast tip. So I use an Arms and Armor. I think this one's the, oh man, I forget because I looked at it the other day. I'm like, you should write that down. It's like the effect book, Arms and Armor fetter. So if you are interested in practice, we tend to use a fetter which has really been optimized for practice. I'm going to get some water. I actually had the second COVID vaccine, so here I am doing this literally yesterday because I work with children. So I am going to be a little bit congested throughout this.
Okay, you need to take a breather.
So now that I have my voice again, we have my fetter. This one's actually custom sized. I am a very, very short person. So I think it's a little bit shorter than usual. And mine, there's that rough estimate of like armpit height, give or take. I like it. It moves fast. I like to move fast when I fence and fight. So it's a really great tool for me. Now I have kind of the B team that I throw here, but I'll do a little show and tell. I have my old workhorse that I used for years. This is a Victor Berbecutes. They are available mostly through Purple Heart. Again, it's another fetter. It has a shelf here and a much longer handle. And you could see how different it looks with me and how that might affect what I do. So one of the things I kind of keep in mind, especially with my students, is you really want to pick a tool that works for you. The great thing is we have a lot of makers who could talk a lot more about swords and probably more about steel. I like to follow those conversations, but it's not my expertise. But I think this is like a nice overview of like what these things may look. All right. My cats are ready to fight too. I also keep a couple pairs of single sticks without the basket. I find them really useful. I might be using these to mark and set up our space.
Off of there.
All right. All right, to start out, this is something you could do even if you're not in a space where you can really get around, move, and try along. We'll just do like a little wake up and warm up just to get moving and kind of hopefully get attentive with what we do. So we're gonna start out with our shoulders because they're used so much in HEMA. And we're just gonna shrug for 10, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I saw someone say that they only have headphones. I will make this at an appropriate pace so you could see what I do and follow along. I'm not going to get too into the explanation. I'm going to try to keep you guys hopefully engaged. And if I do see comments, I'll try to answer those. So we'll take the pace in a good way that allows you to join in. And a good speed that allows you to join in. So thank you for bringing that up.
This session's also being recorded, so for ticket holders after the event, so they'll be able to go back through and watch it again without headphones.
Great. Awesome. So I'll do like a happy medium. Okay, so starting with our shoulders, another important part are our wrists. So even sitting down, we're just going to do our wrists. And absolutely, if you don't have a lot of space, I'm going to be like very mindful of that. And hopefully you can do it without a rearranged living room. All right, so we're gonna go with our wrists and we're just going to bring them up. So it looks like this, almost like you're pushing against a wall, that kind of hand position. And we'll do that for 10. So 7, 8, I think I miscounted, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're gonna go the opposite direction. So it's like kind of almost that closing feeling. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think when you're doing the physical practice part, we kind of forget because we are expecting to run around and cut and thrust and all that stuff, to have all these big gross motor movements. But what's really important that I found is the fine motor really keeps you able to practice for the longest amount of time. So we're gonna do like some wrist rotation just to keep it safe. Wrists tend to be little fiddly things, so I do spend time with those. And we're just gonna hold our fists out and rotate back and forth. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so you can shake it out a little bit. So the next thing I want to show you, and I have this like vintage rocking chair that I keep, so I'm gonna bring it out so I can try to show you in a position where you're sitting. That's also why I have these guys too. My single sticks aren't quite the size of my sword, so hopefully you can have some sort of sword-like object and follow along with it. So we're going to learn 4 guards. First, very basic guards. And honestly, they're mirroring each other. And I kind of call it a 4+1 because you'll see one more guard that is very ideologically similar, but functionally it serves a different purpose. So with grip, whatever you have, I tend to call these Muppet hands because they're like little Muppets. I work with children. I do a lot of like goofy metaphors, but I think it makes it fun. I will take one Muppet hand and use it as a way to grip the bottom and the top. Your dominant hand goes on top. A lot of people ask, well, I do a lot of things with my right hand, but physically I'm kind of left foot forward. That's okay. Since we're not kicking the sword in this circumstance, keep your dominant hand on the top. So this one for me is my right hand. Again, Muppet hand, so I could get this feeling here. And what I like to do, again, this is something you can do at home. The thing about New York City is we get a lot of people coming in and out, like my cats. So sometimes I try to give people like little things that they can bring home to tiny New York apartments. This is actually a really good finger sensitivity exercise. So to demonstrate, starting with your pinky, and if you've ever played an instrument, this will feel familiar. Attach all of your fingers one by one from the bottom to the top. Now the difference you'll see, obviously this is a wider grip. For me, I do high finger sensitivity. It gives me a good amount of control and refinement because our fingers are very controlled and refined for movements. So even at your desk at work, you can be working on adding each of your fingers on the grip. And you could, of course, go the other way as well. So now we have a good grip. And what we'll do is start out by bringing the sword or sword-like object to our dominant shoulder, which is my right shoulder. And this guard, even when we're in a chair, is super easy and attainable to do. This is Vom Tog. So for those of you who have maybe more familiarity with Meyer, you'll see kind of how easily it flows into Zorn. But if you don't have space to do that, Vom Tog is a nice tight guard that you could bring in here. And additionally, there are many variations with it. So you might see it at the shoulder, you might see it lower, you might see it higher, you might see, anywhere here. And then you have its mirror. So you bring it around to your left side, and then you have vom tog from the left or your non-dominant side. It will feel weird because your arm crosses over, but your hands don't change. If you want to practice with a sword or anything, we'll just start with our right shoulder or dominant shoulder, bring it up and around for 5. So this really 10. So that's 2. I see people following along, thank you. 3. 4. 5. So with that, and one of the reasons why I like doing this drill is because vom tog means from the day or the day guard. And when you think of it and you're looking at it in this field of vision, this viewpoint, you could see it kind of tracks like the sun in the day. So I think that's a really good way to think about it. Your head is like the earth, and then your sword moves around it like the sun. If you're lucky enough to be able to stand up, we'll do right foot forward, again, working with small spaces to keep it. We'll have our right foot forward, pretending like we took a step. We have it here, and we can go forward and back for another 5. So this is 2, 3, knees nice and bent, which also helps with small spaces. 4, and 5. So hopefully that wakes up, some of our movement a little bit. If you don't have a sword, and I see some people are lucky enough to have some equipment they can use, it looks basically the same. The main thing to remember, if you don't have your cross guard, you got your Muppet hands, and your fingers should all be basically lined up. Shouldn't be like this, should be like this. So even if you're using, I don't know, like a hammer or even a pen or something like that, check your hands. If you're able to use, or a ruler. I see Kent has something there. Just make sure all your fingers line up together. If you're like this, it feels super weird. This feels weird already, but when you're all crossed, it makes you feel a little discombobulated. All right. So what I would like to do now is go to a lower guard. I'm just going to keep bopping this chair in and out. So this one's going to be a little tricky because it does come forward more. I'm going to also get an angle. So we'll look at flug or the plow guard, which is down here. So we took our hands from up here, bring them down, and kind of put them at your hip pocket. I wanted to wear my galaxy pants, so I don't have a pocket, but just imagine that you have a hip pocket right here. So it's actually pretty easy to do when you're sitting down, as long as you have enough space in front of you. And then for the other side, so we're going from here, you could just bring it across to your left pocket. Again, check your fingers. We're all in the same place, especially if you don't have a formal sword or sword-like object. And we're going to, I always do my legs with this, so maybe if you want to, you can too. It helps get them out of the way. We're going to switch back and forth for another 5. So this will count as 1, and I'll count you down. All right, ready? So 1, 2, 3, 4, good, 5. If you are in a seated position or in a small space, feel free to keep doing your reps in that position. I'll stand so those who do have the ability to stand can see how this guard transition and this drill evolves. So we started here, right foot forward, dominant hand, dominant foot. We're going to, if you can, step back, and that gives you more room to have it here. You don't want to be too high or too low, just a nice comfortable spot that protects this quadrant of your body. So really, guards aren't always static and they're not always going to protect everything going there, but it is a good way to eliminate that option from people who would try to attack you at that lower right quadrant. So starting here. So now our dominant foot's back, other foot's forward. We're gonna step for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Always remember to keep your knees nice and bent. Our small spaces do help us with this right now because no one's way up here right now. But it does help you move faster. It lets your legs stay engaged, and it lets you move a little bit easier. I do recommend doing any sort of nice leg workouts, even something like yoga, which is really great because our legs actually are quite important in what we do. And being able to, have that smoothness is really, really nice. I actually have a friend who loves doing yoga for this stuff and calls it murder yoga because there are some similarities. If you've seen the chair pose, which you're here, this is perfect because you get your knees and you're really used to having that extension and pull upward while your knees remain bent and your legs remain grounded. So that's just a fun fact if anyone wants to work on anything else that can help how they practice. And also there's a lot of resources for yoga. The great thing about Knightly Arts is that it is a very complex system. There's many parts of it. And I know we're in a situation where we can't always go to classes or do what we want to do. So having creative alternative solutions also work. So even if you have a horse you take care of, if you have a horse, it's horse country where I live a little outside of the city country. So you end up with a lot of horses around. I'm not a horse person, but I'm learning a lot just being around them. That's also something that could fit into the many topics you'll see in HEMA. Most fact books do have a section that talks about horses and mounted combat. This might be a little heretical, but if you're sitting at home on a chair, you kind of feel like you're mounted anyway, which is a great perspective to think about what you're doing in your training, and maybe just a fun way to stay motivated. I'm gonna have a sip of coffee to stay able to talk to you. So if you want to shake it out real quick, go ahead, grab some water or anything else you need. And now we're going to put it together. We'll start sitting. I also have my fun boffers, so I'm just going to keep switching instruments so you could see how it fits with whatever training materials you have. These are fun because we literally just made them for fun. They are pool noodles. It's a great way to make it accessible. Is it perfect? No, but is it fun? Yes, and that's usually a main motivation for most things people do. And they're really short. So to put it together, you have 1, 2, I'm gonna demo it and then we'll count 3, 4, and then back at 1. So we're gonna make a square. I'm gonna scooch back so you can see. All right, we'll do 5 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll keep counting from there. If you're standing, go ahead and do what you need to do in your space. We'll do these 5 reps and then I'll show you standing as well. You may stay sitting if you can or need to. Ready? 1, 2, 3 to fluke, 4 to right fluke. 1, or well, 2, 1. Back to Vontag. 2, 3, 4. We're up 3, 1. Vontag. 2. Flug. 4, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last one. 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now with some space. Right foot back, left foot forward. We're not going to pretend like we took the step this time. We're going to step with it. So 1 starts here, 2, 3, and then you're going to step back because we have a small space for 4. All right, we'll do 4 more of these. 1, 2, 3, and step back for 4. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. You could start seeing how moving between guards can be really drilled and practiced. I thought about doing like basic techniques, but part of what would happen, I think, would be a lot kind of gets lost. There are a couple basic things to keep in mind when training, and with like the Lichtenauer tradition, when it comes down to it, it's opportunistic. Hit whatever's closest to you. Try not to get hit. The technique I'll do with you guys, I want to see if we could do, is called Nachreisen. So those kind of movements, that back and forth, and being able to either have a threat presented or void will be seen in that technique. And I hope that comes across a little bit better on Zoom than trying to go through and talk about something that's more complex. When it comes down to it, it's the ideas behind the manuscript and really getting that more advanced understanding. And since a lot of you are sword people, I figured having both like a basic exercise and also like a more conceptual takeaway might be good for you guys. So you could have different options of what you take away. All right, so we will do some cuts. I'm just checking our time, and I think we're perfectly on it. Because one of the most fun things to do with your sword is, of course, use it and not just run away from the other guy. This is why I spent some time on grip and why I spent some time on what we do with our fingers. Because when you're propelling a cut, it's coming from this pinky. And even as tiny and beat up as my pinkies are, it could still propel some energy. I'm going to show you a fun exercise. You might not have the space or have really able to do this in a place where you're not going to hit anything, but this is a nice demonstration. You could take anything, I'm using my winter hat, that fits over the tip of your sword and propel it across the room with just a squeeze. And I'm even going to do it from my knees. So even down there, it's shooting into my heater. Excuse me. The COVID vaccine. I feel very lucky because I'm able to get out of bed and do this, but there will be some coughing and congestion. And it's the only reason why I'm wearing makeup. Like, I looked like a zombie this morning, and I'm like, oh no. All right. So for cutting, we want that power, we want that energy, because we want to get through and not just cap someone. Being tapped by a sword, still not a good day, but it might not be a win. And when you are in a situation where you end up sword fighting, you want it to be a win. I don't see why you wouldn't. So to get a good cut, we're going to start from the pinky and go through the whole chain of our shoulders and bodies. We are starting now, since we're not pretending we've stepped, with our left leg forward this will come together when I stand up. But for that reason, think to yourself, this shoulder will be a little back, not too back, so you're sideways. If you see like only your arm in the screen, that's too much. Go about a 45. So this shoulder is a little bit back, this hip is a little bit back, so that you can use it to go forward. And that core also makes it even more powerful. You get your initial movement from that squeeze, and then the rest of your body makes it powerful. So what we're gonna do now is start on the squeeze. And we're going to squeeze for 5 on one hand and then squeeze for 5 in our other guard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice, and this is why I picked the colorful one, how it rocks with just the squeeze. And then we'll go here, and we're gonna squeeze for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy. Now to get to the fun stuff. After 5, we're going to cast our sword out to our furthest point if we can. If you're sitting, you can stop here before you hit an object like my light. If you're standing, feel free to stand with it. So we're gonna do it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're gonna go to the left and fob tog from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could already feel like you honestly, with just that, you feel like you kind of have to hit the brakes already. It should feel like, oh, it's just shooting out, it's going. That's a good feeling to have. We're gonna let it continue on. If you don't have a lot of space, hold tight and we'll work on that. For those of you who can, we're gonna go through a cut, so make sure you have this space available in each of your directions. So from the squeeze, now we're not pretending anymore, so our right foot goes back and our left foot goes forward, so we could have that movement. We're gonna squeeze 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then step to carry it through. Also, the good thing about indoor spaces and our homes is that now we're more considerate about not hitting the floor. You don't necessarily want to hit the floor all the time. You should be stopping it almost like you're wringing a dishcloth at the end. That's how it'll feel to keep you from hitting the floor. A lot of things with the hands. All right, let's do 4 more of those. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let the sword go and carry through. Good. Notice we're doing a 45-degree angle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and carry through. 2 more of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and carry through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and carry through. Now the weird feeling one, we're doing it from the left. It does feel weird. Oh no! Many light fixtures have fallen to indoor practice. Purple Heart actually just came out with another indoor trainer that I'm looking to buy. I just saw it. It's like a wooden one. And you can also get like custom engraving with it too. So you could do all this stuff indoors and it's cheaper. So if you're familiar with, let me just push these guys. Woodenswords.com, indoor trainers, I think they're less than $100. So it makes it a little more attainable to get something where you could do all this crazy stuff in your house without having the landlord mad at you. We'll go from the left. This is our weird side. So we're here. Now our non-dominant leg's back, dominant leg forward, back, back. So squeeze, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, shoot out, and let that step carry you through. I'm gonna scooch back some more because I can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and through. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and through. We did a little bit of cutting. For people who are sitting, let's talk about creative ways to do this. I hope this isn't too far away to where you can't hear me, but we're gonna go through it sitting so you can see. Half cuts aren't necessarily common in Lichtenauer, but there is the idea of a Zeck, which is a quick opportunistic cut, Z-E-C-K. This is going to be different than what we were doing earlier because we can't go all the way through. So we would squeeze to get that propulsion and just as far as we can with it. So if you need to, when you're sitting, you could just squeeze and let go. And that kind of gets you a little something in your smaller space. In practice, they end up more of a, if you ever hear anyone like, oh, don't do that, that's a bad cut. Like, it's fine, it's in the manuscripts. Where you just do a quick little tap and then you get away. Again, you might not necessarily get immediate win, but if you keep doing it, you'll eventually get there. Let me see what our time looks like because I know we said a little bit of Q&A time. And I think I just have one more thing I want to cover. I think we're okay to do that. All right, perfect.
We don't actually have, there's no session after this. So if you run a little over, you're fine too.
Oh, sorry, I just lost your volume.
I said if there's no session after this one, there's a break scheduled after this one. So if you go a little over, you're okay.
Okay, great. So I want to at least show a technique. And I think we might be able to make this work. I see a couple people with their cameras on, so I'm going to use you as what I'm aiming toward. This is called Nachreisen, or there are different translations. Translations are often various and either fun things to argue about or stressful things to argue about, but people love to argue about translations. To be simple, nach means after. So you're following after or cutting after or going after when you're talking about the nach. I think this will work because I'm going to initiate a cut toward you. You're going to void, which we kind of covered, and then you get to return a cut. So for my end, I'm going to be cutting like this, and I'm gonna overdo it. I'm gonna be like, Like I said, we don't necessarily want to see the back or too much of the side of the person. I'm going to make a mistake. You will take advantage of that mistake. When you see me cut, and I'll use the red one so you can really see it, I want you to step back in Vom-Tag. Then once you see me in this position, you can cut at me. I think we can make this work. All right. So I will start by cutting. Go ahead and take your step back and then return it with an overhaul or a cut from above. Good. It looks like we could do it. So we're going to do a handful of them and then I'll kind of talk about a little bit conceptually, or we could go into Q&A. Depends how everyone feels. Vom-Tag Club. All right, we're gonna do 5 of these. I will start and cut toward you, and I overdid it. So now you back away from my cut and you cut toward me because I am open. I cannot well defend myself when I overcut. All right, let's do 3. Cut toward you, go ahead and move out of the way of the cut. And now that I'm open, cut toward me, good. I'm gonna go 2 more times. Overdid it. That was a bad cut. Left myself open and good. I saw some of you cutting toward me on your own. I want to see if you do that. Great. 1 more time. Good. Good. I think actually we're right on the time we estimated. So now we could do like 15 minutes for the Q&A.
Sure.
And I'm actually really happy that it worked and that it looked like you guys were able to do it. I'm like, oh, okay, that might be a little crazy, but we'll see. Yeah, and I will reconnect this so I could hear and see what questions you may have.
All right. Well, I guess we'll open it up now if anybody has any questions for Tan. Kent usually has questions or comments. It's
And I
okay.
loved seeing your ruler. That was my favorite.
Now, I'm having a great time. Unfortunately, because of the computer setup I've got, I'm in my basement with low ceilings and
Yeah.
treadmill and all kinds of stuff. So it requires some more finesse than I've got.
That's why I also tried to focus a little bit on some of the fine motor stuff. I know it's not as like flashy and cool looking, but it's definitely something I think everyone can do and is an important part of being a someone who likes to fight with swords no matter what discipline. I also have been a person who's injured my hands several times. They're tiny and they're very, very easily injured. So it's also important for me whenever I build the basis of somebody's knowledge to make sure they don't have the same injuries that I do. Yeah, but I love
it's also good advice for anything. I play racquetball too, and
Yes.
I always do the gross motor stretching.
Yeah.
Now I'm also gonna, because there's a lot of wrist and forearm in it and twisting.
Absolutely.
So got to do that too. So thank you.
Yeah, racquetball and tennis and all the racket sports are actually really good models because a lot of the injuries we get tend to be kind of similar to what comes up in those sports. And I saw somebody who said they've broken every finger at least once. I really empathize with that. It is not fun.
So what you were just saying about sports and the racquetball and tennis, that sort of goes into what we had Evan Ringo and Beth Hammer talking.
Oh, I love that.
Talking yesterday, and they talked about how any sport will improve your sport, like basically
Absolutely.
doing that. So, are there any other general sports though that people might have better access to that you think do help with the HEMA fighting?
If I could mention yoga again, I know it's really kind of funny to think of, but there are so many things that help you in general. And really having a strong core makes you a strong swords person, which is something that I hate doing, like core exercises. I hate doing ab exercises. I'd rather be a little fluffy than have to sit down on the floor for a while. But yoga is a nice way of doing that because I don't feel as bad doing yoga. And really, like, if you think of like the warrior positions for yoga and the kind of angles you get, they're really, really helpful, especially in what you could see in Meyer. And I can actually, let's get a visual aid.
And while she's getting that, I want to put a historical plug in. It's not a sport, but dancing masters were also often fencing masters in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. So there's got to be some crossover between like ballroom dancing with a couple and mirroring positions and stuff like that. It's all body mechanics. So
I just came back.
if you're into ballroom dancing, that should help too.
I know
just
a
in
couple
terms of
swords
the
people who do that.
Yeah, the geometry of movement with somebody else.
Ballet as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the classes I've been taking, we've been doing plie squats, ballet, or curtsy lunges, things like that are really ballet type moves.
And then you end up doing sword moves.
Yeah.
That's fun. Sorry to talk over. Zoom tends to do that. But since we were talking about ballet, the great thing about Meyer and having my Meyer book here is that you could see some of these. So for you in ballet class, how often does it feel like you're doing this? Or if you're in yoga class and you're in one of the warrior poses, you have your forward leg bent, your back leg straight, and your arms extended. all of a sudden, like there's that connection there. And there's, for both dance and yoga, there's a great deal of resources available online, like racquetball, tennis, those are all great too. Really anything. I was actually a figure skater, and there are other figure skaters in HEMA, like a couple. I think Anton Hudovic, as I mispronounced his name, we'll pretend that I didn't, and Kaya from Valkyrie, all figure skaters, all excellent fencers. I would like to be considered that. I've been doing it a while, so I'm letting my students have that spotlight. But it gives you that understanding of balance and momentum, and dealing with sharp objects in and around your body. Well, around your body. So you get kind of that safety mindedness too. But really, like, explosive power is really good for that if that's what you want to get across. Anything with a really depth perception. Wow, I got all sorts of random stuff in this Meyer book. I have oppressed rose and stickers. Again, I work with children. Random things pop up in all of my stuff. But yeah, there's lots of things available. I went on like a yoga kick last summer and was like waking up with it. And also that's just very mentally rewarding. And the focus with it is really helpful too, because focus is very important with fencing. Okay.
Any other questions?
I saw some comments and I just want to read those real quick.
Yeah, somebody mentioned the lockdown longsword videos on YouTube.
I feel like I've seen some, but okay. So things to look for there. Yes, absolutely. And I think a couple of the people you have coming up, I think Justin might be doing online classes.
He is.
Okay, great. Yeah, so he's also a good resource. Warm-ups before forging. I'm glad you could help. I was actually going to recommend a hammer if people had that around, because you can definitely do all of these like fine motor training with like either a blacksmith's hammer or your normal household hammer, and get a lot of value from it. And they're often, I think a lot of hammers are either close to, or I mean, neither of them are particularly heavy unless you have a sledge, but you get a lot of strength training from it too.
I think we have time for one more question. Anyone else? Well, all right. I guess I have one more question for you, because this is something we're asking all presenters. Big question of the day. What is your favorite sword?
Oh God, don't do this to me. My favorite one to train with is this one, my Arms and Armor fetter. I really like everything in the side sword family, or like that transitional rapier. I do like one-handed swords. I feel pretty while doing it. And that's really the most important part, right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of why I gravitated toward Meyer. I got one of my friends, Rainer Van Dort, to do a rapier class for us last year online, which is really cool, which is a great opportunity because he lives all the way in, oh gosh, where is he now? He's in the Netherlands, I think. Yeah, no, he's Dutch living in Norway. Too many ends, but yeah, I mean, he's really far away, and a fantastic fencer, and like a good friend. So I was really happy to be able to arrange that with him. But yeah, like sometimes you just gotta feel pretty when sword fighting. Not that I don't with longsword, but like rapiers also are really beautiful to look at. Longsword's also pretty, but I'm at the point where I'm like, I like how it looks. I like how it feels as well. And I think there's also like that, we all get into fencing for whatever reasons, and we kind of want to be swashbucklers. And with rapier, you kind of feel that, especially rapier and dagger. But yeah, I hope that is.
It does. It answers Good job. Well, thank you for coming out and doing this for us today. And it was really great to have you. Check out her, what's your webpage?
Roguefencing.com.
Yeah, check out roguefencing.com. Tanya Smith is based out of New York City, and we'll be taking a break now. We have an hour break, sort of a lunch break, and then we'll be back at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And
Mi sa che si stanno proprio saltando.
Thank you for participating.
we'll be back with James Elmsley at 12 o'clock.
No, 28 connessi. Vabbè, ce ne sbattiamo un po'.
All right.
Take
Have
care,
a great
everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.